Reimagine, Area 51 and the New Technology. We started off discussing mainly Area 51 with Nori Hayakawa, and now I'd like to pretty much go beyond that and discuss now the new technology in regards to aerospace and other endeavors. And I'd like to welcome my guest, Mike. It's nice to meet you, Mike. Could you give us a little background as to where you're coming from and how you've come about some of the information you're going to talk to us about?
Well, I'm basically a private pilot and aerospace researcher. The primary focus of my research deals with black budget aircraft and electromagnetic propulsion systems.
Wow, okay, and so I see the immense display that we have here. I guess we could start from the beginning, and Noriel gave a lead-in regards to World War II and technology that was going on at that time prior to the inception of things we call like the B-2 bomber and so forth. Elaborate, how far was the German technology at that time? How far along?
Well, we should probably start with what's happening at this time here.
Okay.
We have an article from Jane's Defense Weekly, May the 2nd of 1992, indicating big bucks for black budget. And here they highlighted the fact that in fiscal year 1993, our current annual black budget was in excess of $16 billion. And I'm convinced that this is really just an Air Force party line. The actual black budget is a number much larger than this. And so what we're really dealing with here are three levels: black programs, deep black programs, and then what is known as USAPs, or Unacknowledged Special Access Programs. If you work in one of these projects and the president asks you for specific details, your mandatory reply is to be, Mr. President, no such project exists.
It sounds like, like I said, Independence Day, when they could not even tell the president about what was going on.
Exactly. And basically these funds are being pumped into black projects by the military-industrial complex, and this is exactly what President Eisenhower warned of us in his farewell address to the nation when he stated that we should be cautious and aware of the military-industrial complex because they had free reign and no congressional oversight.
Oh, jeez. So now that we've got that with the budget, we can see where they're at. Perhaps could you give us a little history and tell us a little bit about what has been going on, which we are not aware of, basically?
Well, I think definitely what's been going on is certainly when the government wants to keep a secret, they can, and I point to three examples. Number one, the Have Blue prototype first flew in 1977. The first production F-117 first flew in 1981, and we also have we also know that it wasn't made public until 1988. That's one example. Okay. We also have the example of the Manhattan Project. Very few people outside that program knew anything about that. So when the government wants to keep a secret, they really can.
What about U-2 and the, like I said, the B-2 bomber and the Aurora? Weren't those also kept secret?
Well, those are definitely some of the secret projects here. We have a display of the U-2. First flight was on August 4th of 1955, and we know that Gary Powers was brought down on May the 1st of 1960. So how many people, how many congressmen knew of that program? Here we have the A-12 Avenger II, which was to replace the A-6 as a twin-seat attack aircraft. But in 1991, that program was canceled by the United States Navy. However, according to John Lear, we may have a fleet or squadron of 8 of these craft flying at this time.
So this craft is currently being used, possibly?
It's possible, yes.
Okay.
It's possible.
Do you have another photo?
Yes, here we have the Tacit Blue, which basically a stealth technology demonstrator. The program started in 1982. 135 flights were made, ending in 1985. It has a twin-engine propulsion system and also cruises at approximately 252 knots at 33,000 feet.
Okay, that is an original plane. I have not seen anything.
Again, we have the Tacit Blue, and we can see very similar cockpit detail as similar to the B-2.
The B-2 bomber.
And again, we have the UAV, or Unmanned Aerial Vehicle. This is the Predator, built by the company in San Diego. And there's also Teledyne Ryan. They also have their own ongoing unmanned aerial vehicle programs. Here we see the 8x10 blow-up.
Okay.
So really we should ask the question then, is there something more advanced than these white world programs that we're seeing here? Do we have something that we're spending our money on that is far superior to that? I'm certainly convinced that we do, because yes, we have the quote from Jane's Defense Weekly, Mr. Ben Rich, who is the former head of Lockheed Skunk Works, who stated here, before he died, Ben Rich, who headed Lockheed Skunk Works from 1975 to 1991, was quoted as saying, We have some new things. We are not stagnating. What we are doing is updating ourselves without advertising. There are some new programs, and there are certain things, some of them 20 or 30 years old, that are still breakthroughs and appropriate to keep quiet about. Other people don't have them yet.
So he's already admitted to the fact that some things are still kept deep secrets and they're not going to be revealed at this time.
No question about it.
Now what about, I would like to know about spacecraft, or what people consider alien saucers. Do we have that capability at this time? Do we have saucers?
Well, that would have to fall under the category of anti-gravity propulsion systems. And there's been all this speculation that we've reverse engineered. Is it possible that we have these craft? Well, we have an interesting article from Jane's Defense Weekly here, June the 12th of 1993. And very quickly they said, as a postscript, anyone who believes the science of anti-gravity to be too arcane, too esoteric, even for the U.S. Air Force, should consider the electric propulsion study undertaken by SAIC for the Astronautics Laboratory, now part of the Phillips Lab, in the late 1980s. The study's primary objective was to outline physical methods to test theories of inductive coupling between electromagnetic and gravitational forces to determine the feasibility of such methods as they apply to space propulsion. In simplified terms, an anti-gravity propulsion system. It remains for some the ultimate quantum leap.
Oh, so they already know they were conducting research in regards to anything. Wasn't I read recently a report from the Swiss or someone that they were successful. It was put on the internet, I believe, and I got it off that, where they had raised a small weight up using a rotating magnetic force down below it.
That may be possible because I certainly know of 2 experiments done, one in Japan, one in Moscow, with rotating gyros.
Okay.
One was stationary, one rotated at 20,000 RPM. The one that was rotating exhibited a loss of 30 grams. So there seems to be a reduction in weight about a vertical axis.
That is fascinating. Now, is there any of the craft here would you like to elaborate on for us so that we can have an understanding what these are?
What we have here is a brief overview of some of our ongoing black programs and semi-black programs. Over here is the Northrop XST. One and one only full-scale radar cross-section model was built in 1976. Here we have the Aurora, allegedly a Mach 6 to Mach 12 hypersonic scramjet-powered reconnaissance aircraft, uses a modified liquid methane fuel with a boron base so that the fuel can burn at very low oxygen levels.
So that's the Aurora right here, correct?
That may be one version of what the Aurora may be. They can be anywhere in the world in 3 hours and rock buildings 16 miles away on takeoff.
Now, what about this here? It looks like a saucer to me.
This would be the Nellis electromagnetic craft. Again, we have the Tacid Blue, which we already highlighted. We also have the Honeyboo, or Honeyboo craft from Germany. And there's been all this talk about speculation with German discs, and the Germans had a cutting edge. And it's certainly no question that when it comes to breakthroughs in aerospace technology, the Germans were really at the forefront. And we can look at the Me-263, first operational jet fighter. We also have the Me-163, first operational rocket-powered interceptor, the V-1, the pulse jet-powered bomb. There's no question Germans had a leap in this technology. And we have the New York Times reported on December 14th of 1944, floating mystery ball is new Nazi air weapon. And these were floating Foo Fighters type craft that the Allied B-17 pilots saw during World War II.
So they already had crafts that simulated something what we call a flying saucer.
That's very possible.
And they had that in a report, and that's amazing.
We have a, based on a 3-view sketch
Okay.
from Jane's Defense Weekly, a future offensive aircraft from British Aerospace.
Okay, what about this craft here?
This one here is the TR-3A Blackman, and according to Aviation Week Space Technology, this craft was used in conjunction with F-117 stealth fighters during Desert Storm.
Oh, so we already had it in use. And this craft
This is the Vril 1 German craft.
Okay, that's from the 1940s?
1940s, correct.
Oh, so they already...
Here we have the A-12 Avenger 2 McDonnell Douglas program.
Okay, and we have the Dark Star.
Yeah, we have the Lockheed Dark Star.
Which
That's
we had a photo of.
already been flying at Edwards.
Okay, and up here, I think we showed a picture of this earlier. This is
Tacid Blue.
Correct, and the SR-71 Black.
Yeah, that's the follow-on scramjet version of the SR-71.
And finally, the
Finally, the British Aerospace anti-gravity proposal, right.
And this one is currently, or what year was this first?
That was a proposal from British Aerospace.
A proposal
Yeah,
time.
proposal.
There's quite a few aircraft that are black budget or beyond. Now, how is it you're able to get some of this information to find out that this is in the works? You've got it all from, I guess you'd say, declassified or from articles that are in the public domain? Is
It's
that
just a
correct?
matter of doing the legwork. That's all
Right.
it is. Going to university libraries and bothering to spend the time with the literature. That's all it is.
Right, because in other words, it is out in the open, even though supposedly we think it's so secret. It's just that it's very difficult to find in any mainstream type of media.
Correct.
Okay, and on the side here, you have quite a few pictures. If you'd like to elaborate, I'd like to see if you get some more information on
Sure.
the
This
craft.
was really the first product when it comes to very high altitude reconnaissance aircraft built by Lockheed Skunk Works in Burbank, headed by Kelly Johnson. And we know that the first flight was on August 4th of 1955. Basically, we've got different ER-2 versions that NASA is working with. Later versions of the U-2 were termed the TR-1, additional tanks for longer range endurance. And it had somewhat of a lower radar cross-section, but could still be picked up by enemy radar. So it was really Lockheed's first bid at a high-altitude, long-range reconnaissance aircraft.
And those are all pictures of that aircraft?
That's correct, yeah, TR-1, U-2.
Now, I guess one of the major questions I would have is this craft right here, because this seems like something that I would see as a UFO. And I want to elaborate, is this something that is man-made then, or is a craft that it's under construction or already been built? Or
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, John,
Okay.
because we have a 3-view drawing, basically a cutaway
for me to hold that for?
of what's termed the ARV, or Alien Reproduction Vehicle, also known as the Flux Liner. Basically, 3 of these craft were on display at Norton Air Force Base on November 12, 1988. One was 30 feet in diameter, the second one was 60 feet in diameter, the third one was over 120 feet in diameter. First one was partially taken apart. We know of Congressman George E. Brown Jr. being present. Also, Senator Cranston was present. And what we've got here is really something going on that is far in advance of things that are really shown in the white world. In the crew compartment here, it uses a synthetic vision system that produces a 3D image on the inside of the pilot's visor. And most of these cameras here, CCD cameras, are off-the-shelf type cameras, basically taken directly from the Vegas casinos.
Oh, so in other words, they get a 3D image rather than looking at a 2-dimensional when they're trying to decide upon directions and so forth of what's going on.
Exactly. And there's really nothing alien about this technology, because in this cutaway we have the patents from T. Townsend Brown exhibiting many of the B-field Brown effects. We also have patents from Tesla. And so when you put the pieces together, it forms a pattern, and we can see that it's very likely that we do have these craft at this time.
How would this vehicle fly, or what would it be like? Would it make a lot of sound? What kind of speeds? Do you have any information?
Well,
on?
I'm convinced that it would be extremely quiet, and we know that initial power-up is by 2 marine batteries. Once it stays in our atmosphere, it turns into a Tesla coil or over-unity device, and then once it exits our atmosphere and inside of our atmosphere, it can tap into the zero-point energy.
Also, it can tap into that field that we know of, because supposedly scientists have stated that they are not able to tap into that field yet.
I think that would probably not be true.
That's probably not true. And if they could, because that has the potential, from what I understand, if I'm correct, 1 centimeter of space has the equivalent of energy, potential energy, as that of the whole known matter of the universe. Every centimeter of space, supposedly, that's what I have read recently at least. Is that pretty true then?
That may be true. That may be true. If we get to the model here, we
Okay.
can see the articulated arm in the lower fuselage section. We also have 24 oxygen tanks around the inside circumference and noble gas tanks in the central column. This upper section here would have a crew of 4 in the crew compartment, and basically it uses a magneto-ionized plasma propulsion system that produces an inertialess flight path. Pilots can be flying at 10,000 miles an hour, make a 90-degree right angle turn, they feel no G's at all.
Oh, see, that's amazing, because some people would say that multi-Machs wouldn't be capable because of the G-force and that it would be too hard on someone's body and so forth. So according to this, you wouldn't feel that inertia.
Well, that's true, because we know of F-16 pilots are basically dealing with G-induced blackouts after after about 8 Gs.
So, but this would be able to overcome that, possibly?
We have a patent for a device that creates a secondary gravitational field.
So they would not have to induce that type of gravity
no
stress.
G-force at all.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Now I remember you mentioned one other thing when I was at a lecture that you were at, that you were giving. It was in dealing with the B-2 bomber and other types of bombers,
Right.
the way that they use the energy source that they use and so forth, and the way that they become stealth so that you're not able to be able to detect them. Perhaps you could elaborate a little bit, and hopefully layman language so we can understand how does this, what type of fuel does it use, and how is it able to make it so it is not being able to be viewed by radar and so forth.
Well, I'm convinced that we're really not getting the complete story on the B-2.
Okay.
I point you to very few examples. Number one, the current cost per B-2 is $2.28 billion. Most of that is deferred over 18 craft and 10 years of R&D, but we're still talking about a large chunk of change per copy. We
Okay.
also know that according to Aviation Week Space Technology, the B-2 is powered by four 19,000-pound static thrust engines, but the maximum takeoff gross weight of the B-2 is in excess of 335,000 pounds. And I've spoken to Mr. Burt Rutan at Mojave, and I've also spoken to John Lear, who is one of the 5 top pilots in the world. And John told me that there's a high possibility that that aircraft would have a difficult time becoming airworthy using that low of thrust to weight ratio. Finally, number 3, Aviation Week Space Technology reported that the B-2 electrically charges its leading edge wing to reduce the radar cross-section and also electrically charges the exhaust gases to reduce the infrared signature. This may act as a hybrid B-field Brown effect or anti-gravity propulsion system. I'm going to hold that out there as it may be a possibility.
So it's a possibility. And then, because in other words, what you're saying is that the weight that they're stating and the weight that you're actually seeing are not in sync with one another. So it makes sense that there has to be something else being added on to the craft itself.
That's a possibility, yes.
Oh wow, that is amazing. Now, in regards to you're mentioning how it's charging itself, perhaps if you could break it down a little bit more, some of the terminology, because I know some people, like even myself, would be lost a little bit in regards to how the B-2 actually uses fuel. What type of fuel does it use?
I'm not familiar with the exact type of fuel that it actually uses.
Okay.
But it would probably be a standard JP type fuel.
For the craft itself. Yeah. Okay, now along with this, how much of this craft do you see being originated from Area 51 research, or are there other locations people should be aware of that this type of research is being conducted?
Well, think about what Jack Northrop had built in the 40s. Was definitely convinced that the flying wing was the way to go, culminating with the YB-49, which eventually crashed at Edwards, and that was directly leading to the B-2. And we know that a 1/5 scale radar cross-section model was built by Scale Composites. We know that that company is involved with some of the B-2 programs, and we can see that Tehachapi is the location for the Covert Northrop facility. That is a radar cross-sections facility in Tehachapi, California.
So they up in Tehachapi.
Correct.
You know, what about right out here at the Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station? Is there any type of research being conducted there?
That I'm not familiar with.
Right. In Area 51, what kind of these were actually developed or possibly developed out in that area?
Well, we should highlight the fact that we know of 4 active runways now at Area 51.
Right.
One 10,000-meter runway, which is half paved and half dry lake bed. We know of one 4,000-meter runway, which is completely paved. We also know of 2 2,500-meter runways, which are completely dry lake bed. So there is the opportunity for almost any type of craft to be operating from that facility.
Right. This may seem a sidebar, but I'm just curious. What would be your take on what I saw in the news the other day, the Phoenix Lights? And would there be any possibility of a craft that would be the size that supposedly these people may have seen? Because it was supposedly extremely large. They estimate over 100 yards or something like that in diameter. And then they had the video on it, and it was on one of the television news actually. And no one within that city, the councilman, no one wants to answer the question of what those lights were and what was that structure supposedly.
Well, since we know that we're spending countless billions of dollars pumping these funds into black programs, there's a high possibility that that might have been one of our nuclear-powered flying triangles that the government's involved with.
What's a flying triangle? Explain how does that operate?
Well, a number of reports were done, early results in 1960, where triangular-shaped craft over 300 feet per side have been sighted. Some of the things were built and have been sighted during the 90s, early 90s, in the Lancaster, Palmdale, Antelope Valley area, and have been passed by joggers. I mean, joggers can actually run quicker than these craft can fly. Extremely low noise level, a hovering capability, very steady radar cross-section, and it'd be
Right.
very difficult to track such a craft.
Oh, that's amazing. It reminds me, there was a film where they had transported in the future and they had craft that are all shaped in that form that were flying about, and I wondered if that technology was probably, in the film, was actually taken from some of the secret projects.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, no. Are any of these a model of that type of craft? or-
No,
No.
no. Mm-mm.
Hey, well, the other question I guess I'd like to ask is, in regards to the craft, which one of these craft would be what you consider high-speed type of vehicles? I mean, there's some you said for hovering mainly, and which ones would be multi-Machs, or if any of them would be at those type of speeds?
Well, if we think about what's happening with the Aurora, we know that the U-2 came before the SR-71,
Okay,
which was powered by two Pratt & Whitney J-58s producing 32,500 pounds of static thrust. The Air Force claims that the SR-71 is a Mach 3 plus aircraft. And what do we mean by Mach 3? I mean, what
Right,
are we
good
talking
question.
about here? 2,100 miles an hour. I've heard of two reports, one in Los Angeles, a gentleman who knows a number of retired SR-71 pilots, and he was able to discern from the pilots that the SR-71 regularly flew hypersonic, which is Mach 5. I also heard another report of air traffic controllers at
that'd be
Dreamland
this one. Okay.
can sense and are told on their roster list to be looking out for the Blackbird approaching and overflying Dreamland at Mach 5.2. So I'm convinced that the Blackbird can at least attain Mach 5. And as far as ultra-fast type craft, this would
Right.
probably be the fastest here, definitely out of our orbit type capability.
That craft there?
Yeah.
Really? Now, what kind of speeds is it possible that it can achieve? Do you have any ideas on that, or?
Well, if you can use a device that we already have a patent for that produces a secondary gravitational field, as Ben Rich had stated before he died of cancer, we know of one gentleman who was present at a cocktail party before he died. Ben Rich pulled 15 of his associates aside and stated to them point blank that we already had the technology to travel among the stars, but it was so wrapped up in deep black programs, it would take an act of God to get it out to the public.
We already have that technology.
We already have the technology.
Star Trek, basically.
It's probably a 9 to 5 day job for some engineers, yeah.
Oh, I'm really curious then, along with that, what have we ever gotten technology in regards to warp speed? I mean, that would be something phenomenal, but I'm curious.
Field propulsion, time tunneling, it may be difficult to prove that kind of a thing, but I'm going to leave
Right.
that open. It's a possibility.
Right. So now we have actually several craft that can actually attain speeds where they can escape the Earth's atmosphere, rather than using the rocket propulsion that we use for the shuttle and other types of craft.
Well, if you think of what happened on July the 20th of 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed at Tranquility Base, they're still dealing with liquid rocket boosters. Saturn V, producing 7,700,000 pounds of static thrust, was still dealing with dinosaur technology. I mean, we haven't moved in propulsion systems since the V2 in World War II. I mean, it's really a joke. We haven't produced any new type of systems? No way. We do have new systems.
Something must be going on,
Yeah.
but it's just went underneath.
Right.
Yeah, well, that is just fascinating. Now, along with this, the type of technology for aerospace, do you know any applications that's being used for military for, I know Noria had mentioned perhaps for surveillance or for payloads or whatever, and do you have any research in that area?
Well, I think
Since it is black budget, I mean, obviously doesn't seem to be used for civilian purposes.
some of the UAVs, the Sikorsky Cypher craft, approximately 6 feet in diameter, has twin contra-rotating propellers, a very steady camera platform. So definitely surveillance type craft.
Okay, any of them for military type applications for like basically for bombs and so forth? Or?
I don't know of any UAVs as being in that category.
Right,
Yeah.
because some of these definitely would seem that they have the capabilities. Now, does any other country possess this type of technology? What about Russia or some other country?
Well, we know in the UK, British Aerospace has their own anti-gravity proposals going on. So not only
Okay.
in the US, in San Diego by Science Applications International Corporation, they're having ongoing proposals, but also British Aerospace has their own anti-gravity program.
In Russia, I just had heard this, that a lot of the papers that were taken from Tesla ended up in, where his home country was, in Yugoslavia. And someone had mentioned to me that Russia had gotten a hold of a lot of his research. Now, I don't know if that's a legend of some kind, or if there's some validity that maybe Russia also was able to escalate further than what we hear about Russia did with the space industry. Have they also went into far deeper projects?
Well, it's highly possible that the Russians had somewhat of a jump on this technology because Nikola Tesla, who should probably be voted person of the century, was a gentleman way in advance of his time. We've heard reports that when he died in the Manhattan apartment that he was living in, a number of FBI agents confiscated 18 145-pound case-sized drawers, all full of notes, diagrams, 3-view drawings, letters, and out of all of Tesla's brilliant inventions, Tesla's, quote, holy grail was an electric flying machine. That was his holy grail. So what were the results of that little thing that happened there? What happened and what did the FBI confiscate? And we know of a report where Tesla was speaking in Austria in 1915 where he mentioned a flying machine quite unlike the present ones, devoid of sustaining planes, ailerons, and propellers, propelled completely by reaction. Any student of Tesla knows that Tesla was not involved in rocketry. This was an electromagnetic propulsion system.
Sure, he was far advanced at his time. This is the other comment that I had heard about. It was a device called the Cosmosphere out of Russia, which is dealing with something similar to this and electromagnetic propulsion. And that's why I was wondering if you'd heard anything, because I know that's probably their deep black budget project and we may not have much on it. But I just read something in passing in regards to that. You have any last comments? We're running right towards the end.
Well, I really think that these deep black programs need to be exposed and our government held in full accountability. The truth must no longer belong to a selected few, but to all mankind.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
I appreciate you for coming on this program. It takes a lot of courage, and this has been Imagine, Area 51 and the new technology. Could you imagine if we had these craft and they were available to the public, what would this world be like? And would we be driving around in cars that use gasoline? I think not. I think it would be a whole different society. So please, get the truth out there. Do your own research and help us to be able to get all the public involved so that we can have a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Imagine.